how is this being viewed by you? You sit in Europe, you sit in London, and you see what's going on between China and the United States. What prism are you looking at this through?
Well, as an economist, I'm very doubtful of the virtue of these tariffs. They'll end up hurting the U.S. consumer. I think a better way to have approached this would have been to create some kind of a consolidated bloc, Europe, Japan, the UK, and other developed countries, and front up to China and say, well, we think that these and these things need to change, like less state ownership, less subsidization of industries, less threats to intellectual property, and so on. But doing it this way, I think, risks upping the ante and this breakdown into trade blocs, which is not healthy.
Do you see any kind of exit ramps? I mean, is the midterm still the one to watch here, that potentially things could fizzle out afterwards?
I think it's possible, but I don't think we should exaggerate the extent of the impact. Tariffs have a very bad name because of what happened in the 1930s. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs were imposed in June 1930, and later they were widely blamed for the Great Depression.
There's been quite a lot of revisionism on this, by the way, John, as well.
Well, that is clearly wrong. What actually caused the Great Depression was the collapse of money and credit between 1931 and 33. Money and credit in the U.S. declined by a third. Now, we had the same sort of thing in 2008, and we're clearly not in that situation at the moment. As long as the central banks don't allow that to happen, and they won't, then domestic demand will continue to grow. Now, trade and restrictions to trade enter the GDP through a little bit at the end, the change in the net exports. Actually, it's not even the change in the net exports, it's mainly the price of the change. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the impact on the US is widely reckoned to be of the order of 20, 30 basis points of GDP at max.
What about for China, though? I mean, we've heard little isolations of stimulus, albeit we take a look at now, they're mulling a tax relief for some of these cars. Yep. They're talking about bond financing for some of these troubled private sectors. Now they're talking about the national team is there to rescue stocks as well. Is this a signal that Beijing is really digging in their heels now in this trade front? Can they actually stomach this kind of loss?
I think they can. If you think back to what happened in Japan, I was living in Japan in the late 60s, early 70s. And there, the big dispute between the US and Japan was on textiles, and it later moved on to autos and other things like that. The main impact of all of that in the long run was to accelerate Japan's upgrade of all its industries into higher value-added products. And I think the same will happen in China. These lower value-added things, which will get hit hard by the tariffs, will simply migrate to Vietnam or Bangladesh or other areas. So these are temporary adjustments reflecting weak demand. I don't think they're going to provide a net stimulus to the Chinese economy.